Hi everyone, welcome to my project management channel. I am Dr. Carlos Chavez, and last week we discussed project risk identification, its inputs, processes and tools, and of course the outputs of all that effort. I'm including a link to that video in the description section just in case that you need a refresher. This week we're going to begin assessing risks and opportunities based on their likelihood and impact. The purpose of performing such analysis is so that we know which risk we're going to spend money, time, and effort on, or otherwise we might waste time on a low impact, low probability risks while a major risk goes unabated. In this video, we will focus specifically on qualitative risk analysis. As we've discussed before, risks are evaluated in terms of their impact and their likelihood. In order to properly perform this evaluation, there's certain information that we must have. So what are these inputs? So we would need the risk register that we developed in last week's video. We will revisit the risk management plan. This will give us a guideline and ground rules through which we can operate. And then finally, we need the scope of the project and of course, organization information. There are many tools and techniques through which we can perform qualitative risk analysis, and I will discuss a few in this video. If you request other tools in the comments section, I'd be happy to answer them. Or if you want me to go more in depth, I can go and create a separate video just for a specific tool. Again, if you request that. Remember, the goal of qualitative risk analysis is for a quick way to evaluate risks and determine an initial priority. For higher priority risks, we will spend more time getting fidelity in the quantitative risk analysis phase. All right, so let's get started looking at some of these tools. The first tool we're going to look at is the probability impact matrix, or the likelihood impact matrix. This is one of the most common tools in qualitative risk analysis. We evaluate risks based on likelihood, such as low, medium, or high, and the impacts of the risk, also in terms of low, medium, high. Other scales involve numerical values, like 1 through 5 or 1 through 10. If you look at the example in the PMBOK, that's the project management body of knowledge, it will show you a probability and impact values between 0 and 1. The evaluation, since this is qualitative, is performed through a mixture of team discussion, expert opinion, and any other available preliminary data. The next tool we're going to look at is the risk data quality assessment. Whatever data is used during risk analysis must be good data for the analysis to have any basis. The old saying, garbage in, garbage out, comes to mind. During this analysis, we want to make sure that the risks documented in the risk registry is truly understood by the team, and the data used to substantiate the analysis is of quality, unbiased, and reliable. We can also use what-if analysis, which asks a series of questions for tasks that can make the deliverable go right or wrong. This forces the team to truly understand the requirements as well as the cause and effect relationship and their interaction with other tasks on a more global systems view of the project. For example, let's say we're building a house and have task A, building the foundation, and task B, building the walls. Task A is a predecessor to task B. Scenario A, we ask a question if we have rain coming in the forecast, and we see a streak of rainy days coming, and it's going to be nonstop. This can have the effect of delaying the completion or even the start of task A, and can therefore also delay the start of task B, and therefore the rest of the project, so we can see the relationship between tasks. In scenario B, we ask the question if there is a way to expedite the arrival of raw materials for the foundation and the walls. Under this scenario, we can accelerate the completion and the start of task A, provided the material arrives before the rainy day streak starts. This can also provide an opportunity to accelerate task B and the rest of the construction project. Risk categorization. this is a process by which we group risk together. The data can be dissected in many ways, like impacts to the critical path or other schedule items. Think of the construction example that we just discussed, where scenario A impacts structural build schedule. Or we can group risks according to the quality of the end product, or even by the sources of risk. This can be particularly useful to dedicate resources on risk mitigation later on and kill multiple birds with one stone if the sources of risks are the same. One great question one of my students asked this week during one of the posts was, is it worth spending time using two or more tools that give similar answers? In this case specifically, he was asking about the what if scenario and the probability impact matrix. Well, the short answer is it depends. Depends on the level of fidelity you want to get from the risk analysis. And you could spend time using both. So for example, in the what if scenario could serve as a qualitative way of performing sensitivity analysis to one of the items in the probability impact matrix. Let's suppose that one of the risks on a probability impact matrix is rain in the forecast, right? Kind of like what we discussed before. Well, the impact is going to be different if it's a 3-hour rain shower versus a 3-day continuous streak versus 3 weeks of a monsoon happening. So that gives you a sensitivity analysis, again, qualitative, very high level. With 3 hours might be, easy, you can absorb that risk. 3 days, you better be doing something about it. And 3 weeks, yeah, you have to be communicating with the stakeholders. Again, these are just some of the tools and processes through which we can do qualitative risk analysis. The output of all this analysis is going to be an updated risk register with the results of all this analysis. Now let's go look at some examples of qualitative risk analysis in real life. For this week's example of qualitative risk analysis, we're going to build on the example from last week from risk identification. If you recall, we were looking at the procurement, manufacturing, and installation of new equipment on a manufacturing facility. The output from that risk identification exercise were risks 1, 2, 3, delays in the manufacturing process, and opportunity 1, 2, 4, which was expediting the equipment request for procurement. For details, you can go back to last week's video, and the link is on the description for this video. The tools that we will use for qualitative risk analysis are the likelihood impact matrix and expert opinion. So before we're able to populate the likelihood impact matrix, let's take a look at some of the expert opinions. So in the case of risk 1, 2, 3, after discussion with the equipment manufacturer, they determined that some of their operations were tied to previously committed work, and the likelihood of exceeding 4 weeks was very high. This would certainly impact the installation team and the final project date. In turn, this would impact customer deliverables of products already on a PO, so we have a high impact. In the case of opportunity 1, 2, 4, after collaborating with the procurement team, they determined that based on their workload, they'll be able to place the order the next day. The impact is gaining 4 days of schedule. The project team is optimistic that realizing this opportunity can either accelerate the overall project schedule or add buffer in order to mitigate risk 1, 2, 3. So with that information, we can now populate our likelihood impact matrix. In the case of risk 1, 2, 3, we have a very high impact, so we have a value of 5, and a high likelihood with a value of 4. In the case of opportunity 1, 2, 4, we have a very high likelihood they're going to do the work the next day, so that's a value of 5, and the impact is 4 days on the schedule. And of course, it can help us mitigate the risk 1, 2, 3. So that gives us an impact value of 3. So you can see where they plot in the matrix. So with this information, we can update the risk register. And if you notice, now we have an additional column, which is risk values. In the case of risk 1, 2, 3, we have a likelihood of 4 times an impact of 5, which gives us a risk value of 20. And then in the case of opportunity 1, 2, 4, we have an impact of 3 and a likelihood of 5, which gives us a risk value of 15. With this information, we can prioritize our risks 1, 2, 3 with a higher value than our opportunity 1, 2, 4. Some common classroom questions around qualitative risk analysis are, what is the purpose of qualitative risk analysis? So we discussed this early on that we want to know how to do an initial risk priority. So we know where to spend more time later on. What are some of the differences and similarities between the several processes and tools used for qualitative risk analysis? Again, we want to gauge the understanding of when it's right to use one tool over another or use multiple tools. And another interesting question is, what are some suggested modifications to the risk register as a result of qualitative risk analysis? And we saw an example of that in the example we just discussed. Thank you for watching today's lesson on qualitative risk analysis. I hope this was useful. Stay tuned for next week's video where we will cover quantitative risk analysis. If you enjoy what you learned today, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for future videos on risk management and project management and the sort. Thank you.